is the Hot Zone. Engaging with the news in a whole new way, international war correspondent Chuck Holton brings insight into areas of crisis and lets you help those affected.
Everywhere you go, it's always a complicated and thorny problem around the border, but that osmotic pressure that you've always talked about is there and prevalent in every one of those situations.
Right, I call it the human osmotic pressure, the HOP. Human osmotic pressure is just like the osmotic pressure for cells. There's always, not always, sometimes it's just a positive pressure pushing them out, like a war pushes people out, or a very serious epidemic or a famine. These are positive pressures that are, a fire pushes you out of the building. Mm-hmm. And then there's negative osmotic pressure. That's the pressure that sucks you in. Biden or whoever saying, oh, come to America, red carpet. That's negative pressure. That sucks you in. Yeah. Positive pressure pushes you out. But when you got positive and negative pressure, now you got yourself a hurricane.
It just accelerates the flow. We look at the 2015 immigration crisis from North Africa into Europe, and perfect example of that. In North Africa, people are living on $1 a day, and they wake up one morning and realize, wait a minute, I've been looking at my social media feed, and I've got an uncle in Sweden, and man, it looks like he's living a pretty good life up there. I want to go up there. And you know what? It's not that far. I don't have anything better to do. I might as well just start walking. And so that's the pressure that pushes them out of the place that they live. Doesn't necessarily have to be persecution or war, but just the fact that I don't have anything better to do, so off I go. And then the reason that they go to Germany as opposed to Austria, for example, is because Germany will give them $16,000 a year in social welfare benefits. And so who wouldn't line up for $16,000 a year for free? We see the same kind of thing in the United States. The welfare programs that people can sign up for that are drawing people here, that people don't realize it, but the free education is a big deal for Latinos. Latinos typically have to pay for public education, and they have to raise money, and they have to do a lot of work for that to educate their kids. Number two is free medical care. And you say, wait a minute, we don't have socialized medicine. But we do if you're poor enough, because they won't turn you away. In Latin America, if you get hurt, you get sick, and you go to the hospital, they say, pay up at the front door or we're not letting you in. But I'm going to die. Doesn't matter. Sorry. If you don't pay, you're not coming in.
We just heard that story a few nights ago with an American. He had to pay, what, $11,000?
It was $5,000.
No, I think he had to pay $11,000. He had COVID, right?
Okay, yeah, something like that, yeah. But yeah, the bottom line is he had full-blown COVID. He was going, couldn't breathe, and they wouldn't let him in the hospital until he paid the bill first. Up front. My son broke his leg. His leg was, sticking out like this, and they wouldn't touch him until we paid $5,000 to take care of that problem. So in the United States, they can't turn you away, and if you're destitute and don't have money, you can go to the emergency room, you will get treated, and that cost is going to go back on the taxpayer. That is a different system than they have in Latin America, and so there is a very strong pressure for people to move for economic reasons. That economic reason is the push and the pull factor that takes people to the United States. So let's talk about the Dalia Gap. What have you seen over the last couple of days in Colombia and Panama?
Oh boy, that was your idea. When we were up in Texas, you started asking some of the Cubans and others, hey, did you go through the Dalia Gap? And then you started schooling me up on it. You had written about it years ago. I think I read that actually, because I knew a little bit about the Dalia Gap. Now I know a lot more. But the Dalia Gap is that area between Colombia and Panama, about 60 miles with no road at all. It's one of the most dangerous places in the world. And so this human osmotic pressure pushes people into South America or from South American countries. They go up through Colombia in that little funnel. Look on the map, you'll see. And they go through that really serious jungle with mountains and everything out there, rivers. FARC guerrillas, cocaine smugglers, robbers of every sort, and they die, get killed through various ways.
A really astounding number of people die going through there. I was surprised even this time, after covering this for years, that so many people die going through there and are killed going through there, because there is no law in there, and the smugglers and coyotes and bandits and everybody that does inhabit that area don't have any problem killing you if they need to prove a point. And
there's no law out there anyway.
Right, so that was a big risk that we took in going in, especially on the Colombian side, where the drugs are getting salted into that group. That was something new to me. The fact that these guys are putting migrants into that migrant flow who are not migrants. They're drug mules, and they're carrying backpacks full of drugs. And the reason that all of the migrants get robbed when they get to the Panamanian side is because that's a way for the drug smugglers to take the drugs, to get the drugs off of their mules without singling them out. They just rob everybody of everything they've got, and they end up with the bags of drugs as well as a bunch of useless crap, and they take the drugs and off they go. So we didn't get a chance to get down into the Panamanian side yet. Hopefully we'll get permission to do that at some point. But so what's been the biggest, like the thing that's really struck you about the dangers that these people face?
It's just a huge business, and each country makes money, right? And I've been, and you have too. Chuck and I have been around the world. We're not just one monkey war correspondents. I mean, we years and
I got two monkeys,
yeah, literal monkeys. But I mean, we've been to a lot of the countries they come from. For instance, we saw a Sikh man out in the jungle a couple of weeks ago on the Colombia side, and I was like, Sikh man. He's like, how'd you know I'm Sikh? And I'm like, well, because I've been, you're probably from Punjab. Oh, yeah. So, I mean, because I've been to Punjab. I spent almost a year in India. So we met about 8 Nepalese. I spent a year in Nepal. So I know where they come from. I know something about their culture, and so do you. You've been to, 120 countries. So when we see them, they're not just space aliens to us. I might have literally been to their neighborhood, right? And so that
you can talk intelligently to them,
right?
Understanding their culture and saying, like, "What? Wow, you came from there. How did you get here?" Now, I think it's important to explain that the people are coming through the Darien Gap because Ecuador and Brazil are the two countries, Ecuador mostly, that will allow people to come in without a visa in the Western Hemisphere. So these migrants from Punjab, I was really amazed. I was looking tonight at the Border Patrol statistics, and there are people from literally 150 countries that come through that gap.
Through the Darien Gap.
150 countries.
That's unbelievable. I mean, it is believable based on what we saw. But
and like 11,000 Cubans and 15,000 Haitians and stuff. But the reason that they're doing it that way, that they don't fly to Mexico to jump the fence, is because they can't get into Mexico. They can get in to Ecuador and maybe Bolivia, and so that's why they come down there. So it kind of begs a question: why doesn't the United States put pressure on Ecuador and Bolivia to stop that?
Or even any one of these states, for instance, either Panama or Colombia. That's the one. Either one of those countries that wants to stop it will stop that entire flow from South America.
That's right. Because
that's a border, Colombia, Panama, that stops all of South America. It only takes Panama or Colombia to do it, much less both.
But the only problem
as you know,
with Panama is...
we were just at the Colombia side. We know you can't easily get to that border if the government doesn't allow you to do it. And Panama, it's practically impossible for any, certainly impossible for large numbers of people. Now, a few Rambos might make it through, but the average, they're coming through with kids that they got to carry in their arms. This is the most ultimate child abuse I've ever seen in my life. 60 miles of jungle. That one lady we saw had one she's carrying, and the other she has to hold his hand. Mm-hmm. It's unbelievable. I just published the photo of it.
Yeah, it's crazy. And, they proved during the COVID crisis that they can stop this, because they did.
Yeah.
They stopped it for almost a year. The Colombia and Panama both stopped all the migrants from coming through. Nobody left nobody left Panama heading for the United States from the end of March last year until about a month ago. Nobody. Like that, none. And so they've proven that they can do it. The problem is that then these small countries end up being the repositories for these people, tens of thousands of people that have no country now. They have no way to get back home. They have no money. They're destitute, and they become wards of the state. So none of these countries want that. And I submit it would be far cheaper for the United States to go to Panama or Colombia and say, we will support, let's build a big camp, and we're going to put a stop to this. We're not going to let these people through anymore, and they're going to pile up in your country for some period of time until they realize that they can't get through, and then they're going to stop coming.
Right.
If we remove the facilitation of them crossing through that Darien Gap, then they're going to stop coming eventually. And then those ones who piled up in the meantime,
and then there's negative pressure that sucks you in. Come to America. Absolutely. That sucks you in. Pressure pushes you out.
The Hot Zone is produced by Amy Holton and Livefire Media.
Now you got immigration crisis into Europe. And perfect example of that. In North Africa, people are living on $1 a day, and they wake up one morning and realize, wait a minute, I've been looking at my social media feed, and I've got Uncle